Pacers lose in Memphis, 128-103. They did not play well. They started a new center, but the story continues to be how injured this team is. If you're listening to this right now, you might be the healthiest guard on the Pacers. We have a lot to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Hello from Memphis at the FedEx Forum, and welcome into a weekend edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today the Pacers are 0-2. They lose in Memphis by 25. In some ways, reflective of the game that was played. The Pacers were down 19 in the second quarter. In some ways not. They cut it to 3 in the third quarter before losing another player to injury, and that's after losing another player to injury in the first quarter. My goodness, this team is absurdly banged up. The version of this team that's going to play in Minnesota on Sunday night is going to be fascinating to see how Rick Carlisle tries to figure this out. We have so much to get to. What happened today that went wrong for the Pacers? Is it even possible or reasonable to be evaluating what happened in this game, or are the injuries just making it impossible? What else mattered from today? Because this one was just, for me, very hard to really take a lot from. And I don't even mean that to write off what happened, because when they did have Ben Mathurin, Taylor Peter gets hurt after 2 minutes. We'll talk more about injuries later. They were at one point down 19. Like, they were still playing really, really poor basketball in the first half of this game. They lose by 25. So, like, from the point they were down 19 on, they only lost by 6, but they were awful in a lot of the first half too. And this team has just sort of bounced all around with their effectiveness level. Like in the fourth quarter and the overtimes of the OKC game, some of the third quarter, they look pretty good. You know, early in this game, they look good. Third quarter of this game, they look good. But when they look bad, they look like really bad. They couldn't initiate sets, and there's lots of obvious reasons for that. Of course, we'll get to that from a health perspective. Their shot making hasn't quite been there. Guys that were making shots at times in the preseason or last year have not been making them. Their transition defense looks very weak. Their defense in general is just not going very well. 128 for the Grizzlies today. Grizzlies true shooting mediocre, but they only had 4 turnovers, a tied for a franchise best ever for Memphis. Just not even feeling the pressure from this Pacers team in this game, right? And again, you could chalk some of this up to availability, but it's not like so many of their best defenders are missing. It's just a lot of challenges the Pacers are facing at the moment. I would say watching them actually try to play and get organized kind of early in this game and throughout this game. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, apologies if I keep looking down to the right. The way that this desk is set up, my camera has to be in kind of a goofy spot. Their shot making and system kind of play was just not there. And I talked to Ben Shepherd and Taylor Peter about this before the game. I wanted kind of their opinion on where the point guard situation kind of stacks up. And they were talking about how, yes, they are nominally in these lineups the point guard. They are dribbling the ball across half court, but they kind of believe the Pacers system is the point guard. It's not like they're initiating in a way that sets up the play and gets everything kicked off. It's like they get it across half court and then the action start, and it's opposed to, like it did in the fourth quarter against OKC, boom, 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 thing to thing, pass, and then there's a decent shot anyway. And at times this season, they have looked like that. I believe even in their current health status, that version of the team is in there, albeit that's not a great team with the lack of players they have. But there is something missing in terms of, you know, the tempo of the game and finding the right matchups quickly, identifying reads quickly that they don't have without all these point guards. And you can really see, and I think every player kind of acknowledges post-game when we ask them, there is a fine line they're towing between even their players who are supposed to be good are playing clunky offense, right? Aaron Nesmith acknowledged that. He said a little bit of both. When I asked him, is this you guys executing poorly or is this purely health? He said a little bit of both. And I think that is true. I forget which other player said it too post-game, but they're kind of in this awkward middle right now where clearly their health status is making it so you're seeing lineups that you maybe thought you'd never see in this game. And obviously the fourth quarter, they had 3 centers on the floor. It was like kind of funny in a way, but very reflective of their health. In other ways, like even guys who should be better together have not been. And it's just kind of all off. The rhythm isn't there. The shot making hasn't been quite to the level it needs to be. Just a lot of desync and irrhythmic play on offense, right? Early in this game, the way I noticed that is Ray J. Dennis came in, and Ray J. Dennis made his first shot and then missed his next day. And I'm not saying Ray J. Dennis had some spectacular offensive performance, but he got the ball moving. I think he finished the game tied for the team's lead in assists tonight, and just him getting the ball popping a little bit and adding a little bit of tempo, right? Sometimes he struggles to push it the way the Pacers need to, but you could really tell in this game that when he came in, immediately their offense looked just a fraction more organized, not even a fraction, a good chunk more organized in a way that really kept them going and made them more potent and threatening. And lo and behold, they were winning for parts of the first quarter, and he kept them in it. And then eventually that all kind of fell apart. But you could see the vision of like why he's playing, what it means for the rest of the team, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then they went to the two-way backcourt with him and Taylor and Peter, and then their defense became miserable. And then they went to his own defense, started second quarter, and then Memphis goes on a 10-2 run. And I could just keep reading my notes over and over, but the game fell apart, and they went down by 19. So I would argue for that early stretch of game, there was some certainly execution issues on offense. This is partially health, partially shot making. Right, it took a quarter and a half of this game, plus the whole first game for Aaron Nesmith to get going. Obi Toppin finally made a three, his first attempt this game. And both of those players, after they made a three, their first three of the game, were both like so relieved because they haven't been making shots. And they can, but they're not. And the quality of shots, as Kyle Taylor and I discussed after preseason, might be a little worse for this team, especially given their current health status. That all makes sense, right? But that can't be compounded with an inability to force turnovers, poor time keeping guys away from the rim, losing shooters all night, Cedric Howard, a bunch of wide open threes, right? It just kept stacking and stacking on errors and errors. And so in a game like that, the only way you're going to keep up when you're not getting stops more than once every, 3 possessions, because the Grizzlies are never turning it over, you have to make a bunch of shots to catch up. Your offense has to be spectacular, and they haven't been able to be spectacular on offense. The only time in this game they were spectacular on offense was Bennedict Mathurin going hero mode in the third quarter. He has been sensational this season, nothing short of it. After an awesome first game, third quarter comes. He actually hurts his foot on a drive just over there off to my right now. And it took him a while to get up, and I thought, oh boy, like they can't afford another injury. Again, we'll talk about this later. But then he gets up, he makes some free throws, he hits a 3, he hits a 2, I think he had a second 3, and then he got in the lane and did a dart of a pass to Ben Shepherd. Beautiful play from Ben Mathurin. He was spectacular. They cut it to 3, and then the wheels fall off. The Grizzlies go up big. Mathurin leaves the game. He's got a foot thing. He might need testing done. He was walking around in flip-flops post-game. If that means anything to you, perhaps it's not too bad, but a 4-foot injury is going to require testing. Feet can always be bad. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor because I saw a dude in a different pair of shoes, or in a certain pair of shoes, excuse me. But once he was out of the game, same thing in the OKC game. You knew it was over, right? Because 1, he's been spectacular, but 2, they've needed their offense to be amazing to keep up with these teams. Their defense hasn't been quite good enough, and their offense has been super inconsistent. Once they lose such a potent weapon, the game completely evaporated in front of them, right? They made a couple pushes. I think they got it to like 9 or 12 or something at one point later in the second half, but it never felt like they really had a chance. And the Grizzlies surged one more time. Cedric Howard bombed another 3, and the game was over. So you can talk about the injuries, and you should, and I'm going to for a long time, as like why they are currently in their state. But even in their healthier moments of this particular game, outside of a nice early surge with Ray J on the floor and some decent play early, they just don't look particularly good right now. OKC, they had some clunky moments. They had even more today. And both of the numbers are bad, and that's usually reflective of a poor night. 103 is poor, and 128 is poor. So a lot for the Pacers to figure out, and a lot for them to really kind of address. The problem is it's not easy to do that, and that's why I was asking about all this stuff post-game of what's going wrong and what's with injuries, because even if they weren't as hurt, well, I guess this is sort of related to their injuries, but like how many times do you look up in these games and go, wait, who's on the floor? And it's not even that Carlisle's making a poor choice. It's just that's who they have. These are the guys that can play the roles available. I'm looking down again because I'm trying to scroll back and find one of my tweets to where I just like, here's who's on the floor right now. This is just before halftime, I believe. It was Ray J. Dennis, Taylor Peter. No, this is right at late in the first quarter. Ray J. Dennis, Taylor Peter, Jarris Walker, Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin. So no center and 2 two-way contract players as the guards. And then Peter got hurt and left. It's like that is the situation they're in, and then they lose another one, right? So it's just a really challenging thing for them to get a lineup that has good rhythm together, that makes good sense, and it's challenging for them to overcome poor shot making and bad defense, and all this stuff in tandem is just a mess. And they were a mess all over the floor today. They have a lot to fix, and yet some of you, and I even my first draft of my tweet after the game kind of referenced this, but the score and their performance is the story of every game. It's a game. But in this game in particular, injuries almost became the story because they are out of guards. They're out of guards. At what point is it impossible to actually analyze and talk about what's going on? Tyrese Haliburton's out. TJ McConnell's out. Andrew Nemhard's out, Quentin Jackson's out, Cam Jones is out, Taylon Peters out, Johnny Furphy's out, Bennedict Mathurin's out. I might even be missing somebody, right? It just was endless. And that the first game, guys fouled out. Like Ben Shepherd has a chipped tooth. He gets smoked in the face by John Morant. It was an accident. He was trying to defend a three. But like they were out of guys, and they're all the guards, right? They're like ball handlers-ish by the end of the game, where Siakam, Dennis, and kind of Nesmith, and kind of like Obi Toppin was dribbling across half court, and you're like, yep, I guess like that's who it is. Like they just are running out of guys. And so that's where I tell you all these things I saw in this game. Their defense was poor. They couldn't keep up with shooters. Their offense was clunky. They're missing all these shots. And even players you'd expect to do those things that I just said, we're not doing them. They played bad. That is always the first thing in a loss. And I'll actually mention a game from last year that will prove my point. But at what point is it like, what are you even talking about? Of course they're playing bad. Look who's on the floor. And that's not even an insult to those players necessarily, but they have either never played together or never been asked to do this much. Like Ray J. Dennis is guarding John Morant, and someone random is guarding Jaren Jackson, or vice versa. Jaren Jackson is guarding who? Like it is so hard to actually meaningfully take anything away from that. And that's kind of what I want to ask Rick Carlisle post game. How difficult is it for him to actually evaluate what's happening? Like what does he think is going wrong because the Pacers aren't doing what they're supposed to, or what they hope to, or what they're being told to, versus they're trying to do it, but they're not used to this role, or not used to that player, not used to this timing, or, some connection is just synced in the wrong way. And they can only answer that. And that's why I think I'm glad they were honest post-game. They're like, yeah, it's a little both. Like we're executing poorly and we're playing poorly at the same time. And they can play better. Their best players can play better, right? Siakam was cold to start this game. It took Mathurin. I mean, Mathurin was very good, but like a lot of his points came in the third quarter. And Nesmith finally got warm after another cold first quarter. And Toppin hasn't, been as effective as it felt like he could be after his preseason. Like those players can all be better, I think. Maybe not Mathurin. I mean, everybody could be better, I guess, but Mathurin's been so good that asking him to be much better is kind of a fool's errand. And they even got better play from Isaiah Jackson. Like they had a real center. He was on the floor for that third quarter stretch where they cut it to three. He was quite good, actually. I feel bad that Isaiah Jackson's good game will get kind of lost and buried in the shuffle of what happened today. But like, all those players could be a little better, but like, that's not what do I make of that when the person setting them up is not something they're used to, and the action is like they're in a different role, or their importance is leveled up and now they're being guarded by a better player. It's just this constantly snowballing effect of like, what do you actually want to make of this? And it's very hard to actually do anything or have a takeaway from that in a way that is super meaningful. And now they're 0-2, and they play again immediately Sunday night. They need to do testing for Bennedict Mathurin's foot, Rick Carlisle said, but it might be hard on a back-to-back. It might be hard to do that in Minnesota. They might not be able to until they get to Dallas and have 2 days off before playing again ahead of that Wednesday. So it's going to be a lot for them to manage. Their injury situation is tough. They might only have 10, 11, maybe if they're lucky, 12 guys available in Minnesota to figure out all this stuff. And it'll be hard to build chemistry. It'll be hard to get going. Like half their healthy players are basically centers. Their front court's healthy. That's kind of nice. But those players have not been effective enough. So a lot to clean up for the Pacers execution-wise, a lot for them to hope will get better from a health perspective, and it's just a lot for them to manage, and that's why they're 0-2. Now, I want to talk about kind of two sides of what this is. The optimism part, if there even is such a thing. I'll air quotes optimism if you're watching. Or the pessimism part, what kind of path you want to go down, how you want to feel about it, is up to you. Ironically, their opponent Sunday night will come up from a game last year, all coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, I got to tell you about two great groups of people. First up is Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Looking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood's Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. I also got to tell you guys about DoorDash. The NBA season is here. It's heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching the highlights, you're for your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. It's the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 or more points, DoorDash drops 50% of your order. With Dash Pass the next day, you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. You can get drip, you can get gear, anything you want, and then more than just food. You have to have Dash Pass. but it'll be covered for your late night highlights, your last minute watch parties, and your double OT fuel up. So next time somebody goes off for 50, use the promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% on DoorDash with Dash Pass. Your shot at a bag drop as well. Dash Pass members only, 50% off, up to $10 a day after a 50-point game with the promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Grizzlies should be your second listen. Glad to be back so you people on YouTube don't have the riveting thing of watching me look down at my screen to talk about the ads. Oh, it's very hard. My setup is very jank. It's just, it is what it is. Okay. There's two kind of ways that I was processing what was happening in this game with all these injuries. It's just like at some point, if you're a player on the team, it's frustrating. You're like, you have all these expectations for what you could do and you want to prove everybody wrong. And you're like, oh, like again, what are we supposed to do? We're so hurt. And so if you are watching this team, I think there's kind of two ways for you to look at it. And honestly, how you felt about the team going into the season is relevant. How you feel about this team, period, is relevant. Your own just general optimism is relevant here. But, the pessimistic view right now is very obvious. They're not playing well, right? They've had, I would say, of their 8 quarters plus 2 overtimes, that's 10 total things. Like probably half of them at most have been good, maybe a little less than that, right? They're not playing particularly well. They've been very inconsistent. That's expected with a new starting point guard and new starting center. And by new, I mean like changing roles or positions. There's some newness expected, but they're not playing well at all. And here's the real, maybe pessimistic take is they're about to play Minnesota. Who remembers the game in Minnesota last year? I believe it was Siakam's lamest game of the season until they started obviously being like, yep, we have our seed locked up. That was his lamest game of the season at that point. I think Haliburton missed it. Maybe Turner did too. And McConnell was great. Toppin balled out. A lot of guys were quite good. Toppin was incredible in that game. And they won. Toppin hit a game winner late in overtime, I believe. And you think about that game, and it's like, even without a lot of their key guys, their system, their style, and their best reserves were all great. They played at the level they are capable of in a win. And I'm not saying that should be expected. That's what made that win feel so good for so many fans, is that they overcame the odds and played an exceptional game in tough circumstances and somehow walked away with a win. And they did that more than once last year. I think that was the most noteworthy one of them in terms of that point of the season. But the Cleveland game and the last game of the season, obviously both teams were resting a lot of guys. That was similar. We've seen these guys who are available, been able to do more than they've been doing. That's why I keep talking about execution being the leading thing of their struggles. We've seen it before. So the pessimistic view is that it's that this current group is capable of more, and they're not showing it, but half the time, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less, depending on your interpretation of their play. Right? They were largely good against OKC. I'm probably being a little too low on that part of things, but they can be better than this, and they're not. And their schedule does not get any easier, and they're not going to just snap their fingers and get healthier. And they don't get home until next weekend. They might, be 1-3 or 0-4 at the time. It's a tough start. It's a tough situation health-wise. They keep losing guys every single game. Half their preseason games, somebody went down with injury. Both of their regular season games, somebody's gone down with injury. 4 of their 6 games. That's as bad of luck as it gets for a team that basically from not even Christmas, December 15th on last year, was almost perfectly healthy, right? They were very healthy, including the playoffs until obviously the injury and Jarris. They were very healthy for a lot of last year. 2 years ago, they were extremely healthy, right? Now it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite luck part of things right now from an injury per standpoint. The pessimistic take is not hard to have when they're 0-2. However, let me present you this. I said this when I was talking to Caitlin Cooper about TJ McConnell specifically. He was the only guy hurt when her and I were previewing the season. And we both were like, well, on one hand, the start of their schedule is really hard. Their first 10 games are really challenging. Somewhere between 2 and 4 wins was basically everybody's prediction for this stretch of the season. Today was one of the winnable games. Brooklyn's winnable. They could beat Atlanta. They could beat some of these teams. Certainly, I'm not saying they're it's impossible for them to win, but it's a tough stretch of schedule. They're not going to be the favorites very often, right? And if you're going to already have a tough stretch of schedule, maybe that is the time to lose a lot of guys. If you're going to go 2-8 to start the season anyway, great. If everybody's hurt, not great, but if everybody's hurt, at least it's a defensible reason. And then when you're healthy, you hope that you have better health luck throughout the season. And it doesn't quite matter. It's not like them being healthy now would drastically change these results. If they were healthy for the full game of game 1 against OKC, or they didn't even have guys fell out, they probably are 1-1 right now, right? Very obviously. But that is the only sliver of optimism I can give you, is that if this is going to happen, where 8 of their 18 are already down, this is, in theory, the best time on the schedule for it to happen, purely based on opponents. It's not the best time on the schedule for it to happen in that it's early in the season with a new look and new style. They're trying to build chemistry. They're trying to establish how they're going to play without Tyrese Haliburton this year. They're trying to establish how Mathurin and Siakam can lead them on a night in, night out basis, right? All the stuff that requires playing. They don't get that early in the season. That obviously is a bad part of the timing element, but the good part is who they're playing. It's not like, I mean, it's so easy to say this, but if you're going to have games that you drop anyway because it's a tough opponent, well, might as well make those the games you're most banged up. That's the optimistic way to look at it, is like maybe they will lose one more game in this early stretch of 10 to 15, but once they're healthy, they can surge out, schedule evens out, they get back into it. Last year showed everything about what this team can do if they get healthy after a very poor start. And remember, last year they were 1-3 and needed a miracle to get to 2-3. Not a miracle, that's a stretch. They played well in that game. They needed a Siakam buzzer shot and a tough 3 late to beat the Celtics in overtime to get to 2-3. Like, they didn't start very well last year. They obviously won their first game in Detroit and then lost 3 in a row. So it's possible they have the same 1-3 record as last year. And I don't think that last year's a fair barometer. What they did is exceedingly rare, turning their season around to the extent they did after 20-25 games. But we've seen them do this. And their schedule being hard at the beginning is at least a reason to squint and go, okay, maybe this is the time for it. Okay, that's the optimism and pessimism stuff. I'm going to close out with a couple more things. These weekend shows are always shorter if you're new to Locked On Pacers. Again, I already mentioned this one. Isaiah Jackson, good, much better. Good on defense. A behind-the-back pass. His finishing was not as good as it needed to be, but 5 boards. They won his minutes by 4. I thought he was pretty easily their best center in this game. They started James Wiseman after he didn't play in OKC. We didn't ask Rick Carlisle about it, but he's done in the past where if they're in a player's hometown or something to that effect, they often, we'll give them extra chances. I'm not saying that's what happened, but, James Wiseman went to high school here, played college basketball at Memphis. They're in Memphis. His mom was here. And first of all, very cool for him. He played pretty well. He had some nice defensive reps early in the game. He was 2 for 3, 4 offensive rebounds. He had over a third of the Pacers' offensive rebounds, right? He did good enough things in this game. The lineups when he were on the floor did not play well as a unit, but I'm not putting that on any one player. But yeah, that was a new wrinkle. We'll see if that actually is the thing that holds or if that was a Memphis specific thing. It was good to see Aaron Nesmith make shots, 4 of 6 from 3 after his sluggish first game from a shooting perspective. That's something the Pacers will hope can carry. And of course, if you're going to talk about good things, Ben Mathurin was just awesome again, right? Carving up a defense, getting to shots that he can make, not with ease, but like he is very comfortable taking and making against basically a defender, 26 points, and he would have had way more if he was actually able to play and finish the game. Actually, that Ben Shepherd did a good job probing and getting in the lane, something he's going to have to keep doing if he's playing point guard. Like, you could point to a lot of players, like Ray J. Dennis's organization was good. You could point to a lot of players and say, this thing was good, that thing was good, this thing was good. I have a hard time outside of Isaiah Jackson being like, I noticed that guy's defense being awesome. And I have a hard time out of a few players being like, yes, they were very good at everything they need to do on offense. There's not a lot of positive takeaways from this game, but there were a few. Their lineups were different again. We'll see what happens. And they're really hurt. And they have a back-to-back road back-to-back against good teams early in the season. It's tough for the Pacers. They'll try to get it on to Minnesota tomorrow. I will not be there. I have to go back home on Sunday to Indy, but Dustin O'Perick will be to follow along with his coverage. And, of course, we'll be podcasting on this podcast feed right after Pacers-Wolves once again with more on this team, their injuries. Can they get a win in Minnesota like last year and so much more? Thank you all for listening today. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East. This podcast is on many social medias at Locked On Pacers as well. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Have a lovely weekend. See you very soon.